Hey everyone, I wanted to do a quick video of what I'm looking for, especially over the weekend, coming into the market as like a more macro outlook before I kind of get down and draw all my levels and get more specific with my TA. So I just kind of want to do an overview. The first thing I do is I go ahead and pull up the earnings calendar and the econ calendar for the week. So right, looking the main things I'm watching is Microsoft has earnings, so does Boeing, and so does Tesla. Those are some pretty big movers in the market, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on those and the reaction the market has. The next thing is this is the econ calendar for the week. What stands out to me is Thursday pre-market, we have GDP and jobless claims. Those tend to be pretty big market movers, so I'm going to be keeping an eye on those as well. So just kind of looking, we're not going to get big news till after Tuesday night. Wednesday, Thursday, those are going to be some days we're going to see pretty high volatility and maybe some more direction in the market. Um, so then the next thing I do is I'm going to look at the three major ETFs, SPY, QQQ, and IWM. Um, the first thing I do is actually as I come over here to the options tab and I look at what the expected move is for the week. And I actually have a little calculator that I plug this information in. The expected move gives us an idea of it's about 68% chance of that it's going to stay within this range. And then I look for the second standard deviation, which is 2 times this. There's a 95% chance it stays within this range this week. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. So we have up to 410 to 381. The other information that I like to gather about stocks in general is the ATR, which is the average true range. I want to know how much and what is the average that it actually moves in a day. And the other one is the RVOL, which is the relative volume, how much volume is coming in for the day or the past day relative to the past. So those are some things I always look for. And I like to kind of keep this data and save it throughout the week so I can refer to it. So going back to SPY, looking on the daily, we're coming again, testing this uh, yearly trend line, downtrend line. So I'm going to be keeping an eye on this as well as potentially forming a little triangle here. We're kind of sitting back in this 390 range. So key areas I'm looking for is above is 400. We break above 400. I'm going to be watching about 403 and then potentially up to this 410 area. There's going to be a couple big areas that I'm looking at. Um, Below, I'm going to be seeing how we react to this 390, 387 are a couple of the support areas that I have. And then below that is 385 to potentially 380. And with the expected moves, I don't anticipate it going higher or lower than 410 to 380. So those are kind of the areas that I'm watching. Coming down to QQQ, same. We have this yearly trend line coming down. And I'm looking at it. We're in this base up here. So we're starting to get in this base again. So this is kind of what I'm watching. I want to see how the reaction if we come back down to test 280 to 279. Below that, I'm gonna be watching 275. We do have this little sneaky gap right here around 273. So something I'm keeping an eye on down to potentially 269 for a bounce, which would be kind of this other base. If we push up, I'm going to be watching this 290 area. Key areas is 293 and then potentially up to 296. So those are some areas I'm going to be watching. And then on IWM, and these are just generals that I'm watching, just kind of get an idea for the week coming up. IWM, same thing. We re-entered this base. So I'm looking to hold this 180 area. If we break below 180, I'm watching 177.50 to 178 area has always been a strong area of support or resistance. Down below that, we're going to get into this 175 area. Pushing up, the biggest key area that I'm watching is this 289 to 290 area. This has been very hard for IWM to get over recently, so this would be a key area I'm watching. If we push above here, we could see 195. So there's some areas I'm keeping an eye on. And I'm gonna go over some stocks I'm watching for the week, starting with Apple. Same here on Apple, we have a trend line that we could be testing here. And then we have a key area and a psychological level at this 140, 141 area. So this is gonna be a big area that I'm gonna be watching. If we break above this, we could see 144 to 145. And then for potential support, we have this 133, 134 area down to 130. We get below 130, we're going to be coming back down into this base, into the 130 to 125 area. So there's a couple of things I'm going to be keeping an eye on in Apple. Next, we have AMD. AMD has a couple gaps to the upside and the downside. So we could see some gaps starting to get filled as we're kind of squeezing in this little triangle right here. So zooming in a little bit more, and be keeping an eye on this 268, 270 area, 260, sorry, 168, 67 area for potential bounces. If we come up and fill this gap, we could look at the 7280s to 73 area as resistance, and then up into 75 into this little gap. And here is 80. So some key areas. So if we break below here, we break below 65, we could see this gap getting filled pretty quickly down to 62, 63. And as we're kind of sitting in this little triangle, you know, this could go either way. Next, I have Amazon. Amazon, we've re-entered this base. We had a nice push up. We have a lot of gaps to the upside, a couple gaps to the downside. So a couple key things I'm watching. We have pretty good support here around this 93 on Amazon, and then as well as 95. So there's some areas I'm going to be watching for potential bounces. If we break below this and break around 90, we could come down to these. We have this gap at 90. So that's something I'll look for if we get below 93. To the top side, I'm going to be looking at this 99, 100 area as a big resistance. If we break above that, we could see this coming up fast as 104 to 105 area. So that's what I'm kind of keeping an eye on for Amazon. Next, I have Ford. Ford, I see this in two ways. On the daily, I see a descending triangle forming right here. So I am watching for if we come back up into filling this gap and testing this trend line, we could see more downside. The other key thing here is we bounced pretty nicely off this $12 area, and $12 seems to be pretty strong support. And then coming down to the 4 hour, even if you go down to the 1 hour, you can see it. We have a little wedge forming. So this is something I'm keeping an eye on because we could be bullish, especially if we come test this $12 area. If we see a break above 1250, we could look for a retest to fill this gap. And then, like I said last time, above this gap into this 1325 to 1350 area, we could look for a reject off the daily trend line. So could play this either way as well. Next, we have Meta. Meta filled this big gap that it was in before. We have a couple gaps to the downside, and we still have another big gap to the upside. So I see this in a couple ways as well. Could be an ascending triangle, so this could be very bullish. But Meta, especially if we go down a time frame, this 140 to 142 area is a very big reject area. So I'm going to be watching here to see if we reject, if we show weakness. We could see some downside potentially to this gaps. We could see a couple bounces around this 135, 136 area, and then again 130. So a couple of things I'm watching, but this is kind of one of the key areas, this 141, 142 area. As you can see on their past earnings, we came up here, topped it, and dropped. So this is what I'm gonna be keeping an eye on. Microsoft, I'm gonna keep an eye on, but I'm not gonna be doing too much TA on it as earnings. I don't play earnings, so it's not something I watch or spend too much time on. Nvidia has been in this weekly inverse cup and handle that I've been watching, and we're kind of coming up to the top of the neckline. So I would like to see this closer to this 189, 190 area. As we come up here, we could see an initial reject, but if we push through here, we could quickly come up into this 200s. So that's something I'm watching as we approach this. As you can see, it's pretty bullish. We have a lot of strength and volume coming into to support it. Coming down to the daily time frame, Nvidia below 170 to 167, 168, we could see a potential bounce. The next would be 165, and then we could actually see we have a little gap down here. We could see a push down if we break this 160 area. So I think we had a strong bounce, yeah, about 157. So 160, 157 will be the next really strong bounce area. To the top side, we still have to break this 180 area. We break 180, we could see us pushing up into this 189, 190 area fairly quickly. That's what I'm looking at here. Shop, I'll be watching a couple things. Shop has pretty big resistance when we get over this 142, and then especially when we get to 145. So those are a couple things I'll be looking at. And then 142 area, so above 142.50, there's been a lot of resistance every time it comes up here. We get pretty hard rejects. But looking on the 4 hour, the 1 hour, we're kind of forming a little cup and then could potentially form a handle here. So I'd like to see how we come into the next couple of days, and I'd like to actually see it bull flag into this area, and I will be looking at this 39.60 to 39.80, a little bit below $40 to see a potential reaction for a bounce. If we do bounce, we could see this break of this little cup pushing up to 140 to 42 pretty easily. So, and then next we have Tesla. Same here as Microsoft. I'm gonna be keeping an eye on it. I want to see how the market reacts to it, but I'm not going to be trading it or doing too much TA on it. So that's kind of my outlook of the week and what I'm looking for before I really start drawing my levels and everything. So I just kind of wanted to share that. Thank you.